4 sports card investing strategies for beginners. Which one's the best one? Stick around and find out. All right, hey everybody, Matt with the Power Sports Memorabilia Show. Thank you again for joining me. If you guys can, please visit the website, powersportsmemorabilia.com. Give me a follow over there on Instagram, @PowersAutographs. And if you like this video and you like the channel, give it a like, subscribe, all that stuff people say in the beginning of a video. Do all of that. So today's video is going to be kind of a fun one. I've been wanting to do this one for a little bit of time here, but I wanted to get a little bit more experience before I did this video. But this video is all about sports card investing strategies for beginners. And I would consider myself a beginner still. I've done a few different strategies on buying and selling, and I just want to kind of go over those 4 strategies that I've found that have worked and maybe some that haven't worked, and kind of talk about a little bit about the pros and cons. Remember, take your time. Don't go buying on a huge rampage right off the bat, which is kind of what I did. Take your time, understand the market, understand the different types of cards now. It can be overwhelming, and do your research, but join a lot of Facebook groups if you can. Find out what people are buying, what people are interested in, and take your time. There's no rush to get into this, okay? Let's start off with the #1 strategy, and that is buying raw cards. So these are ungraded cards, ones that have never been sent to PSA, Beckett, SGC, and just reselling them as raw cards, okay? Not getting them graded at all and just selling them as is. What are the pros to this strategy? Well, #1, you don't have to get them graded. You don't have to spend any money on it. You don't have to send them off to PSA and wait 3 or 4 months for it. So you're not going to have any additional cost to it. You buy the card at $10, you sell it at $20 or whatever you choose to sell it for. And there's very little overhead to it because you're typically, when you're buying raw cards, they are the cheapest of the cheapest. Okay, obviously raw cards are going to be cheaper than the graded cards, so you're not going to have a huge bunch of overhead. So this is a good strategy maybe for someone who's just kind of getting into the hobby, trying to figure out what sells and doesn't want to fork over a huge investment, wants to maybe recoup their money right away. And it's just an easy strategy. Doesn't take a whole lot of learning to do it, okay? What are the cons for something like this? Very little profit margin, okay? You're not really adding much value to the card because it's just you're buying it raw, you're selling it as raw. So you're just hoping that that player has increased interest and that card has maybe become less available, therefore driving the price up. So yeah, you're not adding really any value to it at all. This is, again, typically for people with minimal budgets who are just kind of wanting to get their feet wet with the card game. This is the strategy for you if you're just trying to get started doing something in the card market. Buying raw and selling raw, nothing wrong with that. Again, just very, very minimal profit on that one. Okay. #2 is buying cards that are already graded, so ones that have already been sent to PSA, Beckett, SGC, and then reselling them as is. So you're getting a card, let's say you're buying a Luka Doncic rookie card, you're getting a Prism. You're buying it at a PSA 10. Let's just say they're $700 right now. And your goal is that that card is going to be going up to $900, maybe to $1,000 in the next few months. And you can sell it at that point and make $200, $300, okay? What are the pros of doing a strategy like this? Well, you don't have to worry about the grading. You already know what the grade is on the card. So if you want to be reselling a PSA 10, you can go out and buy a PSA 10, or if you want to do it with the 9s, you can do a PSA 9 or BGS 10, BGS 9.5, whatever you choose to do. So you know exactly what you're getting it for. It's a good strategy for cards that are tough to get graded. So if you go to the PSA population report, for example, this is the population report of all the cards that they have graded for this particular card, and you're looking at Luka Doncic here, and let's say they've graded, for example, they've done more than this, but for example, for easy math, let's say they've graded 1,000 of them, and only 100 have been PSA 10s. Well, that's a tough card to grade because it's less than 10% again at PSA 10. So going out and buying PSA 10s as an investment strategy is actually probably not that bad because potentially that card is going to be going up and up and up a little bit quicker than another card because there's not that many PSA 10s out there. Another big pro here is you don't have to wait for sending off cards to get them graded and wait in 3 or 4 months to get them back. You've already got it graded, and that card is ready to go. It's ready to be sold. And also sets you up for a quick sale too. So let's say, for example, again, you are buying this Luka Doncic card, and all of a sudden, hypothetically, he wins an NBA championship, right? Well, boom, there goes his cards, way through the roof, unimaginable prices, right? And you've got PSA 10s already in hand. You don't have to worry about, oh man, my cards are at PSA right now, I'm not going to get them back for a few months. You don't got to worry about that. You're good to go. Okay. This is actually a very good strategy, I think, for long term. So if you've got some cash that you can sit on a card for maybe a year or so, you're not worried about selling it quickly, this is a pretty good strategy for you. Cons. The biggest one I see here is you're buying a card at its peak. So you're buying it at a retail price, and you're hoping it's going to go up in value. Of course, if it goes down in value, your cost of goods is so high on this card that it's going to be very hard for you to make your money back, okay? So if it goes down in value, you essentially are screwed, okay? My take on this is make sure that you buy the right cards with this strategy. And by the right card, I mean ones that are popular, of a popular player, and potentially also ones that are maybe difficult to grade. So it's going to be a low population on them, and you're going to be sitting pretty if you got a PSA 10 on a card that, hey, it's got a less than a 10% PSA population report for a 10. So something to think of mind. Make sure you buy the right cards of popular players and ones that potentially of low pop reports. That's not necessarily a 100% case. There are some cards like the Luka Doncic one that have been graded, PSA 10s in the thousands, and those still sell regularly. So it's depends on which card you are buying. Strategy number 3 is what they call a crossover. Now, this is when you are going to take a card, for the example here, I'm going to say here, for a BGS 9.5 card, okay? And you are going to resubmit that to PSA and hoping that you are going to get a PSA 10, okay? This is the most popular strategy when it comes to crossovers. We know as investors that PSA 10s typically sell for way more than BGS 9.5s. So that's why people will do a crossover there, okay? Some things to think about when you're doing this is try to look for those subgrades on the BGS card. Okay, BGS does subgrades on corners, surface, centering, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're looking at 9.5s, at least on every single one of the 4 subgrades, okay? That's kind of a good indicator that potentially that could be a PSA 10 card. Not guaranteed by any means. So also make sure that you look at the actual card itself and make sure that you agree with the Beckett grading on there. Because if the centering is a 9.5 and you look at that thing and it says, what the heck, that's definitely not centered, and it's a 9 or maybe an 8.5 or something like that, in your mind, maybe that's not a good candidate for a crossover, okay? What are the pros for doing a investment strategy like this? Well, it can pay off huge if you do the right card. For example, let's say you are going to do a BGS 9.5 and you're going to buy this particular card at $1,000 and you know that a PSA 10 of that card, for example, sells for $2,000, okay? You know that you're going to have probably another $50 to $100 in grading fees. So if you get that 10, now you're at $1,100 for a card that can sell potentially for $2,000, okay? So this strategy works really well on those higher end cards, ones that have a big buffer on there. You don't want to do these with cheap lower end cards because the additional grading cost is just not much bang for your buck, okay? What are some cons for this? The biggest con is really you're going to have a huge investment up front. Like I said, we're going to be doing this for a crossover for typically big time cards. So let's say, for example, like a Mike Trout rookie, you're going to be forking over a big chunk of change there for really nothing that's going to guarantee that you're going to get that PSA 10. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not a guaranteed, even if you got all these BGS 9.5s with all the subgrades, that it's going to be a PSA 10. So really, my suggestion would be focus on the centering first. Make sure that card is nice and centered. It's got good eye appeal, which is really a big thing with PSA. Does the card look good? And then after that, then look at the subgrades. Make sure you agree with those subgrades. And then go ahead and make your purchase off of that. But just make sure that you got enough room to be able to make a decent amount of money off that thing, because you're going to be holding on to that card for a little while there while it's off getting graded. And again, you got no guarantee that it's going to get a PSA 10. My take on this one, it's definitely for the savvy investor, someone who's maybe been in the card business a lot longer than someone like myself. You got to really know your cards. You got to really know what you're looking at the card, making sure, again, the centering, the corners, edges, and the surface all look very good. And you really got to know what you're doing here, because you're taking a big gamble here on buying an expensive card with the hopes that it's going to be a PSA 10. So lots of risk with it, okay? Number 4 strategy, and this one is actually my preferred strategy. I think it's probably the best way to go. And this is buying raw ungraded cards and then sending them off to PSA for grading. And then once you get them back, then selling the cards that you got back already graded, selling them as graded cards, okay? I prefer to send to PSA just because what I've seen is that PSA cards tend to sell more than Beckett cards. But again, that's just a personal preference. Beckett does have a faster turnaround time, but you figure out which one is best for you and go from there. What are the pros for a strategy like this? Huge profit margins. Probably the best profit margins out of any of the strategies that we've talked about today. A decent lower investment cost, because you are just buying the raw cards. And then again, you're going to be paying for the grading. So the grading is going to add a little bit to your investment, but it's still going to be way less than buying that card at a PSA 10, okay? Or even a PSA 9 in some cases. The cons are you're never quite sure what you're going to get with that card. Yes, good quality scans and pictures and everything like that, and talking to the seller can do wonders to help you make sure that you're getting a card that doesn't have scratches, that doesn't have dings or dents in it, the corners are sharp. But even then, to the naked eye, it can still seem good. But once you get it under that little microphone there, or that microscope there, it can show some scratches and whatnot. So, and that's what PSA looks at them through. So, again, I'm not a professional grader. Most of us aren't a professional grader, so we never quite know when we get a card. We're like, wow, that's a PSA 10, and then we get it back and it's a 9. So you're never quite sure what you're going to get. So make sure that you ask all your questions before you're buying these cards. Get as many pictures as you need. And even then, sometimes that's still never enough. So you're never quite sure. One of the biggest cons, though, of course, and this is well known in the industry, is the long wait times to get cards graded. And this is probably the biggest con. So you are going to be buying these cards, let's say week 1, potentially week 12, 16, 20 is when you're going to be getting those cards back graded. So it's a long process, assuming you don't do any express options with PSA. So your investment isn't going to probably pay off for probably 3 to 4 months at a minimum. So you got to get comfortable with throwing a bunch of money out and not sure what those grades are going to get and waiting for those cards to come back. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. But once you get that first submission back, I got my first one back, and I literally sold all the cards in like 2 days. Now, granted, I had Zion and Ja and Luka, the main guys that sell. But it's incredible when you get back that first submission. You're like, oh my gosh, now I can finally sell these things. So you got to be careful, and you got to be nice and comfortable with waiting for the excitement of selling your own cards, okay? But this, to me, is the best strategy for all those kind of reasons I talked about. Lots of flexibility in it, too. You can buy really cheap cards, like $1, $2 cards, and get them graded. You can buy more expensive cards and get them graded. You really got a lot of room on this. And again, the profit margins are what you are really after. You're buying a card that's ungraded for $10 and getting it graded and selling it potentially for $100 to $125, even more than that, depending on who the player is. Those are some really good profit margins. I mean, it makes the wait definitely seem worth it. But again, make sure that you do your homework on the card. Get front images of the front and back. Make sure you ask all your questions, and make sure there's no scratches, dings, and all that kind of stuff. And the corners look good, and all that good stuff that PSA is going to be looking at. So hopefully you guys like this video. I tried to make it as short as I could without getting too crazy and through the weeds here. There's a lot more to go into, but I just wanted to give kind of a general overview. But of course, there's other investment strategies that you can do, but these are the 4 that I've been studying and doing in these 4 months and buying cards and selling them. And trust me, this is a hobby that you want to get into. Once you get those raw cards back ungraded, you are sitting pretty, assuming you've got 9s and 10s and whatnot, and you've got cards that people actually want, because the value is going up, and the amount of collectors coming into the industry is just incredible. So let me know in the comments below. What's your favorite strategy? Do you agree with me? Is there a different strategy that you like to do? And let me know in the comments below. I always appreciate you guys watching. Again, visit the website powersportsmemorabilia.com. Give me a follow over there on Instagram at Powers autographs. Thanks again, guys. I will see you on the next episode.